Hey guys, Tom LoBianco here, editor, co-founder of 24 Site News. That's my handy dandy little sign right back there. Up next is a trip to FedEx Kinko's to get some quality signage. Until then, we're hanging out with Matt Lewis. Matt Lewis and the news. He's got news. We're back for Around the Horn, part 3, baby. Yeah.
Love it.
Lewis, what's up, baby?
Hey, not much, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man. Do you have anything fun for the fourth? Blow off any fingers, any limbs? You are out in West Virginia.
We went to Charm City, Baltimore, Maryland, dude. It was
Really?
amazing. It's so underrated. Yeah, we went to I'm trying to think of the name of the hotel, but we stayed at a great hotel that had this, I mean, just, basically this swimming pool right on the pier overlooking the water.
Oh, is that
And
the Marriott down there?
no, this is it's right on Thames Street.
Yeah, sure.
I can't think of the name right now, but it's in Fells Point. We were in Fells Point,
Awesome.
and I mean, it was just dramatically underrated, I think. The weather was great. We saw, we could see the fireworks from the inner harbor there.
Nice.
So go to my it's Instagram.com/Matt K. Lewis, and I put up a reel. And it's I think you'll be impressed with, like, because I've been to Charleston, South Carolina a bunch of times, and often we'll go to like Charleston and then down to Kiowa, and you get a little bit of the beach and all that, and also you get the city and you get the seafood. But I tell you what, man, I think hour from West Virginia, Baltimore, Maryland was just as good.
It's I used to go every now and then growing up, man, and I haven't been in a while, but I'll tell you, Baltimore puts on a good fireworks show.
Yeah, it was great. It was really, really good. And my wife is my wife is like a planning maven. Like we
Nice.
we claimed our pool chairs at 7:05 the morning of July 4th, and she figured out they moved the fireworks display, and she figured out like where we should be to see it. And we had the best view of everybody at our hotel.
Awesome.
Of the fireworks. So
love being more, man. Here, let me bring up our folks on YouTube, our folks on Substack. Let me bring up so I can see. Let me see if I can actually get the comments coming in.
I'm impressed with you, Tom. I'm impressed with you figuring out how to live stream in multiple places at one time.
I learned a lot at the Leadership Institute with one Matthew K. Lewis and Burke.
We did this, workshop where you and I were teaching, aspiring YouTubers and Substackers how to do some of this stuff. And it is to be like an opinion leader or a commentator or an influencer or whatever you want to call us. You got to be able to write. You got to be able to edit. You've got to be able to like book guests, have a good Rolodex. Then you have to be like a tech expert to figure all this out. How long did it take you to figure this out?
What's funny about that is that it takes, and folks, if you're watching on the Substack, make sure to hit the heart button down there at the bottom in the chat section. Okay, so let's see. There's usually a little bit of a lag. I'm going to go ahead and hit it. And what that helps with is the algorithm. So I want us to be algorithmically inclined.
Wait, could I do this myself?
Yeah.
My computer?
There we go. That's right.
I go to substack.com and I go to what do I search for here, Tom?
Go to 24site.news. If you go to it's that right there. I swear to God, I will get a decent one. Until then, the main art is Hagler versus Hearns.
I see it.
Legendary. 24site.
Echo. I can't.
Oh, Matt Lewis has joined.
I was going to try to heart it, but it was like literally auto playing. So I'll get to that as soon as we're done. Sorry.
It's
Rookie mistake.
we are the noobs. For a bunch of veterans, we really are noobs. I spent a lot of time. Some of that was just learning basic tech. Watched a lot of YouTube videos. Watched a lot of bad YouTube videos. Watched a couple good ones. As much as Chat GPT and the AI overlords are, stripping us of all monetization and all of our intellectual property, it's pretty good for skimming a lot of really bad content to try to find diamonds in the rough.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using StreamYard right here. So this is Love StreamYard. So that way you get us on the 24 site YouTube. And actually, here, let me see production. Let me see if I can add this. Let's do an overlay. Boom.
Wow.
Hey, that's right. Yeah, man. So
I'm
it's
impressed.
yeah,
I'm
thank you.
impressed with your technological savvy on this.
I am happy to produce Matt Lewis in the news, the DMZ, for the right proper price of, oh, I don't know, what's $10,000 a month. I think that sounds
I think
reasonable.
that's fair.
That's $10,000 a month more than I'm getting paid to
That would
produce
only
this.
that would only be like 5% of our annual profit. So that's no problem.
I'm sure you're making like Oliver Darcy style money over there.
Yeah. We've been doing it long enough. We should be. Bill Scher
Right?
and I have been doing the DMZ for, I don't know, at least 15 years.
Oh yeah, man. Yes. And you guys have a great dynamic. I love Cher. He's very he is a lot of people will use this term either diminutively or improperly, but he actually is erudite. Like
Yes.
he really, like, his depth and breadth of knowledge and understanding is amazing.
No, it's great. Like I got invited to give a speech in Texas one time, and I talked them into bringing Bill Scher along with me, and it was the two of us. And
Nice.
we gave a talk about civility and how we have been friends and argued politics for all these years. And you've got to fill like 45 minutes of time, and then there was a Q&A. And I remember, I forget what it was, but they teed up Bill, and he went off on this story, as historical references, citing, all these books that he's read, and he just knocked that out of the park. And I was like, that is exactly why I brought him along. Like, he was able to like totally take this person's question, turn it into a great historical analogy. And it was like, that was worth the plane ticket alone.
Dude, I mean, I would say, easily at least 25% of the reason I got into journalism is Wayne's World 2. When Del Preston is sitting there and telling the story about being backstage for Ozzy.
Oh my God. See, I've seen Wayne's World 1 many, many, many times. I've seen Wayne's World 2 precisely once. I went to
Oh,
the theaters to see it. They did some weird Jim Morrison stuff on the beach. And I'm like,
yeah.
I'm never going to watch this again.
You know what? It is, that thing was built for video clipping, really. It's what's sad about that? It's kind of like whatchamacallit. So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Yeah, good.
Like,
That's a good movie.
first 15 minutes are incredible, and they really should have cut it at that. It just, it just really, yeah, man. It's and guys, make sure you're hitting that love button, hit that heart down there. That helps with the algo. And I'll tell you, a little bit, one of the reasons that Matt and I do this is because I would say that we're hardcore normie. Okay, like, not off one way, not off on the West Coast, off the floating out in the Pacific with like the AOCs and Bernie Sanders, and certainly not floating in the Atlantic with this MAGA fascist crap that's out there right now. ICE agents, acting as like a quasi Gestapo. And
You could get wrapped up in that, Tom. I mean, are you
yeah,
Italian? What's LoBianco? Italian?
what's Sicilian?
But you could, if you were like at the wrong place, wrong time, you could get swept up in an ICE raid. They might mistake you.
I've been confused for Chilean before.
There you go.
You know, yeah, I
Yeah, I
have.
don't think I'm gonna have a problem with that. If
No,
they get me, it's gonna be for my commentary.
you want them coming for
Like,
the right reasons, man.
it's gonna be when
Always.
they look at my Twitter feed or something.
And I don't know where the Overton window is these days. Feels like it's trifurcated, which we will get into. Speaking of thirds, all right, we will be getting into that later on the program. Let's dive in.
Okay.
So I forget what we tagged here, and I swear to God, I will actually write some banners at some point. Let's do a little rundown on the big beautiful bill. How much? What's your sense of this thing?
Well, I think it's a bad bill. I think the only people who might actually be excited about it are hardcore immigration restrictionists. Going back to the call back to the previous conversation about ICE.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think there's anyone who's really excited about it. Even Republicans. I think it's just like putting points on the scoreboard. Trump got a W. So, but I have a piece in the LA Times today where I'm pointing out, Tom Tillis has announced his retirement after voting against it in the Senate, and Thomas Massie is being targeted in a primary, or at least there's a super PAC that wants to primary him, a Trump super PAC. So this is part of, to me, the larger story is not just BBB, but it is Donald Trump's further taking over the Republican Party even more, purging it. You either get co-opted or you get purged. And the thing about purging is Trump doesn't care if you're replaced by a Democrat or a more Trumpy Republican.
Right.
It doesn't matter to him. So, like, for example, Tom Tillis could very easily be replaced by, was it Roy Cooper, right? The former governor of North Carolina. I don't think Trump would really care. Right. I think Trump would rather have a Democrat than a normie Republican who might occasionally not go along with the program. So that's kind of my reading on it so far.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I look at what's happening in Texas with these, presumable primaries against John Cornyn. I couldn't tell you how many of these folks are actually announced, but and my colleague here at 24 Site News, Julie Grace Brufke, who did some incredible reporting around the big beautiful bill. A lot of sleepless nights, like everybody else. Although I have to say, she did not walk off the hill looking like Lisa Murkowski. So there's that.
Yes.
Dude, the look on her face, man.
Like when that NBC News reporter asked her, like, Rand Paul said this, and she just stopped. And like, if looks could kill, that reporter would be dead on the floor now.
I know, man. The laser eyes, the darts. That was Ryan Nobles, my old friend at CNN. Ryan's a great reporter. And I was thinking about that because, Julie Grace had a piece over at 24 Site News about a week ago about Ronnie Jackson, Tony Fabrizio and Chris LaCivita, and that wing of the Trumpified Republican Party are pushing really hard for Ronnie Jackson to run against Cornyn, which would also pit him against Ken Paxton, the Attorney General. Now, which of those two is more, I put in quotes here, conservative? It's Paxton, obviously, but again, doesn't matter.
Yes, correct.
Like that. It's kind of funny to me because it's like it's the old calculations of the establishment that the Tea Party and the Trump world always, allegedly hated of a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're doing the exact same thing.
Right. And if you look at how this bill passed, I haven't read it. There's a piece in Politico today that talks all about the gun silencers and whiskey or rum got some sort of carve out. You've got Murkowski getting, carve outs for Alaska on Medicaid and this is all the, how Republicans were all against earmarks, and you could argue that any of these things distort the tax code, that they create, they distort the free market. They create rent seeking and perverse
Right.
incentives and yada yada yada.
Right.
And yet the way that they're getting their legislation passed is by this kind of corrupt process, which greases the skids and possibly is necessary for a functioning democracy. I'm not sure.
Are we functioning right now? I mean, I'll tell you, man, the horse trading and the sleepless nights, the torture of the rank and file by the leadership in Congress was, sleep deprivation torture might have been the most normal thing I've witnessed in the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's a throwback to a bygone era, and I think a reminder that Trump doesn't buy into the fiscal conservative orthodoxy. I mean,
Right.
he's fine with corruption. He's fine with doing deals, and it's just so weird that that we have this Republican coalition that encompasses such a broad spectrum of people, like Josh Hawley, who says we shouldn't cut Medicaid, because we are the working class party. Oh, there goes that idea, It's very interesting. And look, I think we have to really give Trump, put aside his pernicious behavior and all of that. As an operator, what he has done by taking over the Republican Party,
Right,
and getting all of these people to bend to his will when it flies in the face of their principles in many cases. From a purely Machiavellian standpoint, it is impressive what he's done.
Well, and I think you got to notice too how much this current amalgamation that he has is reflective of what he built out coming out of the 2024 race for the White House. Because remember, nobody outside the House knew the name Mike Johnson. What was it, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, give or take?
I didn't know until like a week before he became speaker or something. It was
Right.
yeah.
And if you look at that, I mean, Hogan Gidley is over there. I don't know the other current staff, but a lot of Trump folks, and also a certain type of Trump folk, I would say, the kind of the social conservatives, really ended up with Johnson and his
team. So Hogan was with Mike Huckabee at once upon a time, to give people a sense of where he's coming from.
Yes, exactly. That populist Southern Christian conservative world of things, and then you have John Thune, and by extension, I would note Tim Scott, and you kind of have the not McConnell, but the NRSC, the campaign committee. You have that crowd operating in the Senate, and you can see how they hold things together, which they're then able to deliver, because I mean, that is a sweep. I mean, for as much as the Senate parliamentarian did strip out of there, and I would note was upheld, all right, and for all the posturing and whatnot, that's an expansive piece of legislation. It's more than anything that Trump ever got in his first term.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's big. I don't know about beautiful, but it is big. And it raises the debt and the deficit, and it does a lot of stuff. And I think stuff that we may be discovering because no one's read this thing, or very few people have, but it's pretty sprawling. And yeah, I think it's just again, to me, obviously the tax cuts are the big thing, or keeping the 2017 tax cuts going. But otherwise, I mean, I think, funding this immigration regime or border regime is probably one of the big takeaways from it. If that's your passion project, then maybe you're excited about this. But it's not like a big daring piece of legislation, that's like even the Affordable Care Act that changes things in a big way. It really doesn't do that, obviously. This had to be a reconciliation bill, so it had to at least pretend to be having to do with the budget, so that they could get around the filibuster. They could do it with a 50 votes plus JD Vance is what they had.
Yeah, man, it is. And also, what a reminder, you can think that, vote counts, in either of the chambers. You really don't, not from the outside. It wasn't that long ago that we were talking about Murkowski, Collins, and McConnell as being three guaranteed no's on anything Trump would do. Well, those were not, they were clearly not only not the holdouts, but Murkowski historically so.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, I feel like if anyone could have stood up to Trump, it would be her. She's not up. I don't think she's up again until 2028.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think so. Trump's not even on the ballot then, presumably.
Yeah.
And she has won by write-in the past.
Yes.
So you would think that if anyone had the ability to stand up, it would be her. And she's probably, I don't know how old she is, but maybe time to start thinking about retirement. So if anyone had like all the wind at her back to give her the courage, to muster the courage to stand up, and yet what does she do? Cuts this deal that, may hurt 49 other states, but Alaska's exempt.
I think back to, I think this is really helpful in the in this Trump administration, certainly more so than the Biden administration or any previous White House, is remembering statements, remembering stances. All right, because if you look back going into this, the Senate was the one, and Thune, under Senate Majority Leader John Thune, was the one saying, well, no, we're not putting everything together into one bill. That is ridiculous. Certainly not reconciliation. Okay, we're not using a budget measure to, jam pack this thing with policy. All right. But then they did. Yeah. And as Julie Grace reported at 24 site, the House, the Freedom Caucus, and the Main Streets, and the moderates, and the conservatives, the hard right conservatives, were saying, oh, well, no way we're going to take this Senate bill. All right, we're going to move this thing to conference. Okay, we're going to hammer it out. And Mike Johnson's like, oh no sleep until we have all the votes. I mean,
amazing.
If they waited any longer, people might have started dying. All right, then it changed your vote count even worse.
No, it's really stunning. And I don't want to hear from Chip Roy or Jim Jordan again about the budget or the deficit or principle or the Constitution or any of that stuff. Regular order, like whatever they want to talk about. Come on, guys.
That's ridiculous. So what do you do? So let's move on to the Democrats here. And I've been shocked at how much Zohran Mamdani, has continued to be a massive story. Certainly, egged along by the New York Times in its most recent piece on his ancestry, and I think it was Columbia University. They tried to do like the Elizabeth Warren thing, and then they used who's that Nazi that they used, the neo-Nazi Lasker or somebody. I can't remember. I was reading it over the weekend. Had to remind myself to unplug. It's a holiday. Okay, that was my independence. But Mamdani I mean, it's fascinating though, because you don't have a story like that in the New York Times unless he continues to be a story, which is very fascinating. What's your take on the lasting impact of Mamdani with the Democrats where they are right now?
So my gut is that I think that this is a big deal. Not because he specifically is going to take over the party tomorrow or 2 years from now or 4 years from now, but because I think, look, the caveat, you don't ever want to overread these local elections or off-year elections or special elections, like yada, 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 caveat. But it does feel like, this is a guy who is young, is charismatic, knows how to use these vertical, like TikTok style videos and Instagram type reels and videos and stuff to get attention. And we are now in the attention economy.
Yes.
And so part of Donald Trump's secret to success, how did he beat Joe Biden? How did he beat Kamala Harris? Rather, attention. He sucks up all the oxygen. People are always talking about Trump. And part of it is that he actually proposes bold, radical policies. That's one of the tools in his toolbox for keeping attention and getting attention and keeping it. So I think if you're a Democrat, now look, as a conservative person, I would hope that the Democrats would nominate somebody who's serious, thoughtful, wants to move away from wokeism, wants to govern responsible, be the adult party. But I think if you're a Democrat, maybe you say, well, hey, Matt, you got that. We gave you that in 2024. It didn't work. The voters wanted someone like Trump. And so I think if you're betting, you bet that Democrats look at what happened in New York and what happened in 2024 in America, and whether it's, Donald Trump or Mundame. How do I say that? How do I say
Mamdani.
Mom. I'm not doing the.
Okay, so who's Trump's mother? Mom Donnie.
Is that how I say it?
Yeah, Mom Donnie.
Mom Donnie. That's good.
Yeah.
The Zoran Mom Donnie. You taught me something. It's like comma with Kamala.
That's right.
Punctuation. Kamala. Mom Donnie.
Right?
Damn, you're good.
Yeah, baby.
Coming on just for this.
I'm a living AP style book here.
Whether it's Trump or Mom Donnie, nailing it.
Trying to think if we had the pronouncer on it, or if we were writing for the Wire, it would be like capital MAHM, Mom Donnie.
Mom Donnie.
Right, with the apostrophe and then the hyphen and then small DANI DONNEY, something like that. Yeah.
You taught me. So this is worth the price of admission. So whether it's Trump or Mom Donnie, it seems like what's working right now is the attention economy, someone who can drive attention and dominate our attention spans. And part of that, one ingredient of that, is proposing things that are not normie mainstream politics. Okay.
Yes, I agree.
And so if you buy into that theory, and maybe you don't, but if you buy that thesis, then if you're a Democrat and you want to win in 2028, like, you take that into consideration. So maybe that helps. What, AOC right now would be the most likely to benefit from if you buy into that theory?
I think so. I mean, I think that's right. I think that AOC, I would not underestimate how much of this has to do with youth and appearances. I mean, this is, I think that we in Washington, we live in this world constantly, in a world where we're always jacked into the matrix. And a lot of people, my friend and colleague Michael Cohen, the pollster, would note here, so many people don't show up until a few weeks before the election. So if you've spent most of your time maybe watching the All In podcast, not All In with Chris Hayes, the All In podcast, with the technogarchs or whatever the hell they are, Schultz, what's that other one? I can't remember the name of it right now, or Rogan or whatever. You would have been exposed to that already. And again, what you said there about Mom Donnie really understanding how to get in front of people, almost irrespective of policy. You could say popular things, which clearly he was doing. If you live in New York City, you think the rent is too damn high, and you don't have what was that, the general from the Civil War with the Burns mustache, right? That guy used to have the rent's too damn high guy.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah,
it's a throwback.
Yeah, right. Deep cuts, baby.
So you're saying you don't think it has to be radical policies, that if someone's just charismatic and good with technology, they could do it?
I mean, this is a pure this is like the equivalent of like the numerology and astrology of my reporting. But I always think back to these studies that you see, once every 4 years, you see a story about it. In the October of the presidential, what do people look for in a presidential in a president, right? And it has to be above 6 feet, has to be tall, generally speaking, and helps to have an aquiline nose. Okay, so I mean, and those, and I'm not
Wait, what's
knocking
an
it.
Apple-line nose? What's that?
The Washington is the opposite of my schnoz. All right, so like it's like very like waspy and like thin, like George
Yeah.
Washington. All right,
Okay.
like for whatever reason, people like tall and like defined features, all
Hmm.
right, in their presidents. All right. Now, is there how much reality is there to that? I have no idea. I've been reading these stories for 25 years now,
Yeah.
since high school. Periodically, they always come across. Um, but I think it gets to that dynamic though of like, what does drive a voter?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're not reading white papers, they're not reading CBO reports, or connecting their Medicaid situation with legislation that was passed last week.
But think about this, okay? How many times has Donald Trump changed a media narrative
Hmm.
by proposing a crazy idea? Like, let's invade Greenland or Canada or
Right.
whatever. It is a tool in his toolbox. Now,
Yeah.
could he have been successful without that? I don't know. Remember the Muslim ban? That
Uh-huh.
is a radical position that he staked out that I think helped him. And part of why it helped him was it just helped define him as not a normal politician.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that this is an eternal truth that is inherently true, obvious, but I think in the moment that we're in right now, the one thing you can't be as a politician,
Right.
and part of that is stylistic, but part of it is your policies.
Yeah. Yeah. Is he consistent? I'm trying to think of Trump's policies as the counter to this, right? And I think you bringing up AOC and with Mamdani here is important because that is a consistent the progressive Democratic Socialist wing of the party, is very consistent in universal health care, living wage, all right, which that those things were pipe dreams a decade or more ago.
Right.
Now we have that. So in many cases, like living wages in cities and certain states. I don't have it offhand, but those are real things now. For Trump, I guess immigration hardline.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he has
Build
been
the wall. Build the wall is a
exactly.
classic example of this.
Yeah, still doing it, right? What's that guy, wall guy, the brick suit guy, still
With the
shows up
suit,
at
yeah.
things, right? Um, let's go. So we're gonna go for another 10. We'll go for another 10 minutes or so. I want to. Okay, so let's do this. And you know what? Do you want to? How you feel about opening up to questions at the end?
Let's do it. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's real quick. Let's hit on Elon's third party.
Yeah.
Is this
So,
real?
well, first of all, I mean, there's multiple questions that this raises.
Hmm.
So, question one, does this signal that the irreparable, like,
Mm.
disintegration of the Trump Musk relationship? So, like, I thought that Elon would kind of come crawling back to Trump. He
Mm.
did delete those mean tweets he said about Jeffrey
Did.
Epstein, and I think Elon needs Trump more than Trump needs Elon.
Yes, I agree.
Um, Look, Elon was against the big beautiful bill. Trump was for it. We saw what happened. The
Yep.
Republican Party is Trump's party, not Elon Musk's party. Elon threatened to primary people who voted for it. I don't think that moved the needle at all.
Nope.
Nobody takes it seriously. Nobody cares. Or they just reason, probably accurately, that Trump, it's if you have to piss off somebody, it'd be better to piss off Musk than Trump, right?
Yes.
So I always thought Elon Musk would kind of see the writing on the wall and just get back in line. But the fact that he's alleged, apparently launching this third party, no
Mhm.
matter how quixotic it may be, does that signal that like he's not coming home to daddy, that this is over?
Hmm. Um, feels that way right now. Um, I mean, the only thing we have, and I was reading about this beforehand. There, as of whatever, 35 minutes ago, I don't believe there are any FEC filings.
Hmm.
So there's no actual indication that this is real beyond the world's richest man making a public statement about it, which I would note is a real thing. Of course, this is also the person who also made a public statement 6 months ago to Laura Loomer saying "F yourself in the face." Okay, and that was a thing as
What
well.
was that about? I forget.
Oh, you know what it was? It was
These scandals are or these like outrages are so fleeting,
it
and
was what was it? It was the H-1B visas, or no? Is it the H-1B? I forget the intelligence
I think
workers.
that's yeah.
Yeah, it's when they had that blow up over that. It feels like a million years ago, right? Um, I mean, he could. I mean, him limiting it seems to misunderstand. And again, this is not somebody who really understands politics. He's got a lot of money, and and let's not underestimate too the impact of what he did with Trump. Okay, because Trump gave him carte blanche. They walked into agencies, into federal buildings with Pinkertons, okay, private security, all right, and blocked public officials from going into those buildings, and in some cases successfully eliminated agencies, successfully fired people. We still don't know the extent of their access to our data. Um, so, I mean, hugely consequential in what he did, but can he translate it beyond that into, siphoning off the manosphere, so
Yeah.
to say, like the Brogan vote, if you will?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I just like on one hand, this is a great moment for that. Like as much as I
yeah,
don't like Elon Musk, um, I think there is a hunger for a third
hmm
party. I think it would take someone who has a lot of money. We saw Ross Perot, you know, without
right,
having a lot. He was not the perfect messenger, probably,
right,
and not a great strategist when it came to building a third party. And yet he got almost 20% of the vote after dropping out of the race and getting back in. So,
right,
I think that there's a potential for this, but is Elon Musk committed to it? There's a lot. If someone were really taking this seriously and they were smart and they had the right strategy and they had Elon Musk's money, I think it might be doable. You
yeah,
know, with assuming you have the richest man in the world's money and you
yes,
did everything right, maybe then it would be doable. But practically speaking, the system is rigged for the two-party system. So you have to be very smart about how you get on ballots.
yeah,
Would not be easy. You would need a candidate. Obviously, Elon Musk is not constitutionally eligible to run for president, but maybe he could run for the Senate or a governor or House or something. You need like big name people
yeah,
running for whatever seats you target. Um, Household names in some cases, probably. Um, but look, I would say my biggest substantive objection
mm,
to third parties is a moot point now, right? If you had
mm,
asked me 10 years ago about third parties, I would say, look, America has been blessed to have a two-party system, because what a two-party system does is
oh,
it forces you to get 50% of the vote plus
right,
one. And to
right,
get 50% of the vote, you have to be a mainstream.
yeah,
You have to co-opt
yeah,
ideas and cobble together a majority coalition. And to do that, you can't be a fringe weirdo. You have
yeah,
to be mainstream.
yeah.
Well, I don't buy that anymore.
I'm with you, man.
So Trump
Yes,
has really undermined the best
yes,
moral substantive argument for the two-party system, in my opinion.
That's a great point, man. Also, God, man, this is why we do around the horn. This is
Yeah.
this is you know what, man? Yeah, this is and for folks watching, please make sure if you're watching on Substack, hit that heart button down there at the bottom. All right, and on YouTube, I have no idea what the button is for that. Hit like, share this. All right, because Matt and I do this weekly so that we can everybody else has their hair on fire, and I would note in many cases rightly so. Okay, but if we're gonna be losing hair over this, and I've already lost enough fucking hair, all right, in a decade of covering Trump, all right, let's pick when the time is right, all right. For incredible observations, what Matt just said, which is that two party two party. I think about campaign logistics, right? And this is one of the best stories that was written during the 2016 election, which it was such a good story that it didn't get the exposure it needed on purpose. I think it was that how much earned media Trump got from us in the press. I think it was Nicholas Confessori in the New York Times that estimated at like $2 billion of earned media,
Yeah.
which correct. Like it's been years since I worked on a campaign, but that is a metric. When we sit down, all right, and it's like, how are we going to get our
that goes to my mom Donnie point too.
Yes. And you could. I wonder if would Elon, because he could do it, right? It kind of reminds me of the Koch brothers, because I felt like when AFP and when the Tea Party and when they were building that 16 years ago, which is, really are lessons that they learned from running for president and decades of failure in politics before they kind of grabbed the moment. They worked at the state and local level. And that's where you really have to do things. And I would note this is true for the Democrats as well. You cannot just rely on Netflix documentaries and Hollywood contracts. Okay, like that does not work. Maybe it worked 8 years ago, not anymore. Clearly, so maybe he could, man. I mean, he's got that the Ron DeSantis plug and play super PAC with him, and those are time tested hands that do this stuff. So
look, I think if you took Elon Musk's money, which is a big thing to take, but look, he's the one who's starting the super PAC, so we start with that. If he were really committed, but he can't run it because he's ego driven, he's probably ketamine fueled. He's never really done, he doesn't necessarily understand politics, but if the right person managing this operation, and then you did the really good candidate selection and you targeted a few races, and like imagine if nobody had a majority in the House. Like if there were 4 America Party, whatever this thing's called, 4 or 5 America Party congressmen who banded together as a coalition, they obviously would decide who controls the chamber and what legislation gets passed.
Yes.
And they wouldn't have to worry about whether the Republican Party likes them because they got elected as a third party.
Yeah.
Anyway, right? I mean, so this could be a really cool opportunity to change things. You don't have to win the presidency. If you targeted the right races, had Musk's money, and you could win 10 seats in the House and Senate.
Yes.
And dramatically alter, the power structure in Washington, D.C. Yes. So that's the argument for why this isn't as quixotic as it may appear.
I would note too, and I think this is one of the big lessons from Trump, is that when you hear the CW, which is that cannot happen, is that very often that is rooted in assumptions of how things have been. Okay.
If the last 10 years have taught us anything,
right.
Crazy things can and do happen.
look at so why is it impossible to break the two-party system? From a logistical standpoint, it's ballot access. What you have to do to have your name appear so it can be voted on, and it's not impossible. The Democratic and Republican.
Elon Musk says, I'm going to spend $50 million to get you on the ballot in this state, and we're going to run 5 candidates in 5 different districts in this state. I mean, think of it like if you had 5 America Party candidates in the House right now, that means the only way the only way Mike Johnson's speaker is if they decide he's the speaker. And then they say, I don't care what Donald Trump's telling you. We're all going to vote as we're all going to vote as a block against this bill unless you do what we tell you to do, X, Y, and Z. And you can't primary us because we're not in the Republican Party. And you go ahead and tell all your Republican voters you don't like us. Fine, because we beat a Republican to win this seat.
It's like it'd be like the House Freedom Caucus with some stones.
Yes. The problem is they never had the leverage because Trump controls their voters.
Right, exactly.
Their voters are more loyal to Trump
exactly
than they are to.
Yeah.
But that would, so again, there's a lot of reasons to poo-poo this idea, right? You could talk about how Musk is, eccentric and this is just revenge. He's not even going to try. And you can talk about how hard it is to get on the ballot and the system's rigged. And like all those things are true. But if you take the money he has and did this in a smart, targeted way, it wasn't trying to take over the country. It was just trying to win 2 Senate seats and 6 House seats or something. I mean, it changes the game.
Could be exactly, man. I'm with you. Let's move on to the Epstein files.
Okay.
While we're talking
Speaking
about,
well, and Musk said or tweeted that Trump is on it, right?
Dude, I love the Schadenfreude of people that made their names on Epstein conspiracy theories. Now being like, oh, it was just a theory.
It's just a theory. Just a film theory. It's delightful to watch. And so the latest, as you probably saw, is that Attorney General Pam Bondi says there is no Epstein file. There is no list, right? There is no list. But she went on TV and said she had the list on her desk a few months ago. And so either she's lying now or she was lying then. And, so either, right. So either Bondi and, all of these bomb throwers were, wrong and conspiratorial before, or they're covering something up now. One or the other. There's no way they look good. Those are the two options. And you've got Elon Musk, who said that Trump's on the list. And here's the other thing. Not only are they saying that there's no list, they're also insisting that Epstein did not kill himself. Which I have to say, I am the last person in the world to be a conspiracy theorist, and I do not know what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. But I will say the day it happened, it seemed kind of fishy to me. It seems a little convenient that he would have committed suicide while being on suicide watch. And Trump was, the president at that time, I'm pretty sure, during the first term, right? So Am I right about that? I think
I'm waiting for the Oliver Stone treatment on this. All right, it took 60 years to find out the truth of the JFK assassination. Cough, cough. I hope we don't have to wait 60 years on Epstein.
Well, they've certainly invited conspiracy theorists. And what's so crazy, Tom, I don't have to tell you this. I mean, just the ironies and the hypocrisy,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like Donald Trump's first term was largely defined by this QAnon
Yeah.
conspiracy theory
Right.
that was premised on the notion
Yes.
that Jewish Democrats are engaged in some sort of high profile child sex ring and using their their blood or somehow getting energy from them. I don't go deep in the theories, but there was some weird stuff. Remember Pizzagate, the Pizzagate, is it Jack Posobiec? I don't know how that's pronounced.
Posobiec, yeah.
Posobiec, Donnie. What do you have a mnemonic device for that one? Donnie Mom, Mommy Don.
QAnon.
Anyway, so there's an irony here as well. And now all of a sudden, Trump's Republican Party is like, hey, don't be conspiracy theorists. Of course he killed himself.
You know, it's they say there's hypocrisy and then there's hypocrisy. All right. And I mean, you know what it is it's horseshit. All right. I mean, that Posobiec, whatever the hell his name is, made his name, which I can't pronounce for some reason. I can do Mom Donnie, but I can't do that guy. He made his name and millions of dollars telling people that, and I would note too, I mean, which is a long-standing, deeply anti-Semitic trope.
Yes.
All right. I mean, it's not coming out of nowhere. Whether he understood it or not is immaterial because the effect is real. All right. Which is, Jews allegedly drinking blood. Okay. That goes back to the Middle Ages. All right. As racism and hate and hatred goes. Okay. And, I was at a MAGA cocktail thing a couple of years ago, and he was there. And this is my first time meeting him in person. And he's trying to highbrow it because he wants like a TV contract or something. And he's like, I don't know, bro. So I was trying to say I was QAnon. I was part of that. And I'm like, well, that's why you're here. That's why you're in this room. Like, you're in this room because you convinced somebody to show up to a pizza shop in Washington with a rifle and start shooting. Okay.
I think that guy who did that, so he showed up, he didn't start shooting. He showed up with a gun to check it out.
Right.
Insisted on going to the basement, I think, and saw that it was nothing there. But then I think, didn't that guy get shot later by the police?
Yes, he did.
More like in the past 6 months or something.
Yes, it was recently. Yeah.
What a crazy world. I mean, there's so many things like that happening now that if you had put in a novel, you'd have been like, I'm not sure that's, maybe take that part out. But the crazy stuff's happened all throughout history. Like, let me give you an example. Remember, I told you, maybe we end on this because we'll go full circle. I was in Baltimore for the 4th of July. So one of the things we did was we went to Fort McHenry. And it's great. If you show up before 10 o'clock, they've got the huge flag the size of the Star Spangled Banner, and you can help raise the flag. It takes like 12 people or something to.
What's up?
It was so cool. But while I'm there, and of course we know that Francis Scott Key was wrote the Star Spangled Banner about the flag being at Fort McHenry during the War of 1812. Also, I knew this, which I don't know if you know this or not. This is crazy, but Francis Scott Key's son was murdered in Lafayette Park by a congressman. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh,
but here's what I didn't know. I'm touring Fort McHenry and I'm looking, different buildings and stuff. There's a prison cell there where they arrested and held Francis Scott Key's grandson because he owned a newspaper in Baltimore that was anti-Lincoln.
Wow. Oh.
And so when Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, he literally arrested the grandson of Francis Scott Key and put him in jail at Fort McHenry.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy?
Dude,
I don't think most people, I didn't even know this part until this past weekend when I was there.
Oh my God. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow,
Isn't
man.
that wild?
No kidding.
And
I gotta go back to Fort McHenry. I haven't been there since I was a kid. Now I gotta get back to Fort McHenry.
Yeah, I was there as a little kid, like on a school trip.
Yeah.
This was so much better going now as an adult.
Yes.
As
It's
a
like
kid,
watching The
was
Simpsons
clueless.
with your kids. You're like, oh wow, this is incredible writing.
I appreciated it so much more this time going there.
Hell yeah.
But it's just weird stuff happens. And it just may be that we went through a period up during most of our lives up until 10 years ago where we were in a kind of a more normal period of time.
Yes.
Where, I mean, some weird shit happened then too, but by and large, we were in this post-World War II consensus period that was generally peace and prosperity and all of that.
It was
and
private citizens doing the crazy shit, not our elected leaders.
Right.
Like,
fair point.
Back then, of course, we do it. A great point, man. We do have the history of it in America. Years ago, I was at the Capitol, and somebody was walking, taking a tour through the old Senate chamber, and I forget it was the congressman who came in during the slavery, the run up to the Civil War, and beat the hell out of what's his name, Sumner.
The caning.
Yeah, exactly. This was probably like right after January 6th that they were doing that. And they were talking about then there has been violence in this building before. I was like, yeah, good point. You're right. There has.
And it led to a civil war.
It did. So, yes.
Yeah, that's the part we need to remember. It's like, yeah.
Okay, man. Dude, this is why we do Around the Horn.
Love it, man. Good to see you, buddy. Next time, remind me to hit this little blue button in the upper right that says stream this to your audience.
Yes.
And okay, when I hit that button, I don't see anything for Substack, but I do see YouTube, Facebook.
Oh, good.
But maybe I could at least stream it to my YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah, if you can. Wow. You know what? Next time we do this, let's. So you want to do Monday at noon?
I think. Let me check the calendar, but I think we can just tentatively plan on those.
Yeah, pencil that. Yeah. We'll plan it ahead of time, so that we do all the setup and everything.
Yeah.
And guys, make sure to support. Find Matt K. Lewis. There's a lot of Matt Lewises out there, so remember to insert that K on all your platforms. Okay, on Substack, YouTube, the Twitterverse, Blue Sky. Yes, even a little bit of Blue Sky.
On Blue Sky, yep. Barely, but I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm on Threads.
On the Threads, nice.
Insta, Facebook.
And find me. I'm Tom LoBianco, editor, co-founder of 24 Site News. That's the name right there. It's also down there. Well, what's up, Canva Graphics? Yeah. That little bug right down there at the bottom, 24site.news. And we'll have more like this. All right, guys. Have a good week.
See you, Tom.
Peace.